Nope.
Cody, you're good now. You're good now.
Could you guys hear me?
Yeah.
There you are.
Okay.
There you are.
All right. Technical difficulties. I guess you guys didn't hear anything of that.
No.
Alrighty, well, I'll give you the spiel again. We are here for another episode of the Bleed Los podcast, this live edition of the show, as we got a lot to unpack tonight. We got the Shohei Ohtani updates with his pitching situation. We got the most recent reports of Dave Roberts and the team getting very close on a multi-year record-breaking contract extension. And of course, we got to go over the Roki Sasaki Cactus League debut. Lots to unpack and lots to like there. But before we get into all that, obviously, we got to thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA, college basketball, to the NHL, UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one source of betting. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And I am joined tonight by Mike Doomsal Salas, who was with me last time that we did this before Roki Sasaki made his debut. But I think the thing we really have to get kickstarted with today is the reports from Joel Sherman of the New York Post, where that Dave Roberts and the Dodgers are closing in the final steps of agreeing to a multi-year contract extension. Mike, it seems like that was always in the cards. That was always inevitably going to happen. That was probably going to be the thing that cap off the offseason that the Dodgers have had. Quick thoughts, realization, you're hearing it, you're seeing it play out. Are you liking the move? Do you want Dave Roberts here long term?
Oh, heck yeah. Even if we'd lost the World Series, last year, I would still want Dave Roberts here with this team long term. He's been a good coach ever since he came in. This is his team. He's building, him and the organization's building the dynasty, and he's the captain of the ship who's going to, I think he's doing a great job. I've always thought he's done a really good job. He's done some bonehead things, in the past in regards to, pitching and bringing pitchers in, not bringing them in, pitching them too long, but, I think he's learned from all that. And last year, I was hoping that he would, be the coach of the year. I thought he deserved that, taking the team as far as he did with the amount of injuries that they had. I'm all for it. I hope he signs a long-term contract, and I hope he's the highest paid. He might as well, be like everybody else on the Dodgers and being the highest paid head coach in MLB.
Yeah, he has a case to be made, and even when Craig Counsell got his contract, 2 off seasons ago with the Cubs, I thought that was a good deal for him because he's a very good manager. He managed a Milwaukee Brewers team that never really leads the league in payroll, doesn't have too many star players, and he was able to get them to multiple postseason appearances, but he never really got over the hump of, the postseason, couple first round exits, whether it's in the wild card, the division series. The furthest he's ever gotten was the National League Championship Series in 2018, where he ended up falling to the Dodgers in 7 games in Dave Roberts' 3rd season at the helm. So Roberts, if you look at the accolades that he's gotten under his belt as the Dodgers manager since he was hired back in 2015 during the offseason, he has pretty much taken the Dodgers to where they needed to be. I obviously there's a couple thorns in the road there as well. We've had our fair share of first round playoff exits, but the record itself speaks, for itself. 851 wins, 507 losses. It's the best winning percentage in active managers in the league right now and in MLB history, believe it or not. And he's led the team to multiple 100-win game seasons. He's won 4 National League pennants. He's a 2-time World Series champ as a manager. He's probably, I had a discussion with this on a podcast that's going to drop soon, the Baseball Banter broadcast. And we talked about Dave Roberts and the culture that he's pretty much built. And it's so difficult to manage not just the Dodgers and the pressure that comes with that, because even though it's not like the New York media where obviously if you don't win, it's considered by many, if not all, a failure. But to manage so many all-stars and superstars, that's not an easy task. I mean, if you want to ask anybody, look at the San Diego Padres the past couple of years. They've kind of been all over the place. 3 or 4, they've had 3 managers in the span of 6 years. Obviously, they've had some success, but Dave Roberts has brought something that the Dodgers haven't really had prior to that, which is consistency. And I commend Dave Roberts. If anyone, I've met him a couple times. I've talked to him, interviewed, all that stuff. He's a great guy, and I know the players love playing for him, and I think that's the biggest thing here. Where he may not be the best in-game manager, we've seen him grow along the way, but the Dodgers are going to pay this guy because they want to keep this group together for the long term.
Oh, definitely. I mean, being in the clubhouse, the times that I've been in there, you can totally see the respect that the players have for Dave Roberts. Going through all the spring trainings that I've had since he's been there, like I said, the team has a lot of respect for him. He is what I always, kind of rolled my eyes when people said, "Oh, he's the players' coach. He's the players' coach," and he actually is. I mean, you could see it, when you're there, and you can see the way that the players talk to one another. You can see how he interacts with all the players. Not just the guys on the major league team, all the kids that are in the minors also. I watched him, in spring training the first week when pitchers and catchers, he was talking to all the young pitchers when they were up doing their bullpen, giving them advice, talking to them, asking them to throw different types of pitches, encouraging them. It was amazing to see. So, I think he's a good coach. I think he's always been a good coach. Besides the faults that he's had, in the past, you don't take a team that has, like I said earlier, you don't take a team that had the amount of injuries that they had, with only like 3 starting pitchers and win the World Series.
And we saw what the team did in October last year. We've talked about that a bunch, being able to manage a team that was depleted heading into October with the injuries they had, the decisions that he had to make, the bullpen management. The lineup kind of took care of itself. The Dodgers offense was a juggernaut the entire way, scoring almost 6 runs per game. I believe they averaged around 5.5. So they definitely slugged their way to a World Series title. But Dave Roberts had his fingerprints all over this season. You could argue that this was probably the best, from start to finish, the best season of his career as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he should get rewarded for it. He's on that 1 year, kind of lame duck contract that a player doesn't like to be under, which is why a lot of them want to sign extensions, or unless they know what type of deal they're going to get in free agency. But for a manager, they want to have, their backs. They want to be with the team that they were starting with. Dave Roberts is already etched in Dodger lore. Why not continue the legacy right now? But he also has to do what players themselves have to do, and that's set their market. And that's kind of, let's getting into this next part here is, what would you be comfortable with, or what do you project his deal to be? And from all accounts, it seems like it is going to break Craig Counsell's 5-year, $40 million contract that he signed 2 years ago. How much do you pay a manager? What are you comfortable with? Do you think it's a 5-year deal, 4-year deal? Do you think it goes beyond that? Anyone in the chat, you guys can chime in and what you would feel comfortable with giving Roberts. But Mike, what's a estimated contract that you're feeling off the top of your head right now?
Right off the top of my head, before we went live, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking a 5-year, $50 million deal, right off the bat. That's what I think that they should offer him. He'll be the highest paid manager in the major leagues. And like I said, well deserved. That's just my opinion on it. I don't see them going past 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if they did a 4-year deal with $50 million. So that's what I think.
Yeah, if I had to put a number on it, like guesstimate, I would say it's probably in the realm of 5 years. It's rare. It's pretty rare to see a manager get more than 4 or 5 years. If I see a 6 or a 7, that means maybe the Dodgers want to get them locked up for the entire contract run of Otani, Freeman, and then Betts. Get all those contracts expired. I would say the Dodgers, they're going to try to beat that $8 million AAV that Council's getting.
Mhm.
Maybe they try to blow it out of the water, give them somewhere around maybe 10, 11, maybe even $12 million per year on a 5-year contract. That would be around $60 million. I could definitely see the Dodgers saying, hey, we pay our players the best. We're going to pay our coaching staff the best as well. And it'll allow Dave Roberts to do what he set out to do, and that is to reset the coaching and manager market, which has kind of, if you look at
Mhm.
compared to the NBA, the NFL, at Major League Baseball, their coaches and everyone on their coaching staff doesn't really get paid the same amount that those guys do. And you can make an argument that they probably put in a little bit more effort than those teams would. The NFL only plays 16 game regular or 17 game regular seasons. NBA has, the 80, 82, 81 games or however many they play. Baseball, you have all of spring training. You got 162 games in the regular season. And then if you're good enough, you make it to the postseason and you got your own gauntlet there, which we have seen can make or break a manager. And despite Dave Roberts coming short a couple years, he's shown that he has that ability to be a postseason manager. And I think he's perfect fit to stay on with the Dodgers long term. And there's an argument also to be had that by the end of this contract extension, you're etching him in lore with like Tommy Lasorda territory, of maybe even surpassing him, depending on how these next couple seasons go. If he gets a couple more rings, I kind of think that's a foregone conclusion. You can probably call him the best manager in franchise history.
Oh, definitely. If he gets like 1 or 2 more rings, it's over. I mean, he would definitely be considered the best coach in Dodgers history, no doubt about it. I think his number would go right up next to Tommy Lasorda's.
Yeah, I mean, he's on his way. Obviously, he's had the fortunate, coaching and managing these teams, these Dodgers teams that have had, multi-million-dollar payrolls, all-star after all-star, MVP after MVP. But like I mentioned at the beginning of this, you got to manage these guys. You got to get them to have one goal in mind, and that is to win a World Series and be the best that you can be. Put the team before, the name on the back of your jersey. And that's a hard thing to do. And Dave Roberts has shown that he is that guy that can lead this team, especially through adversity, especially everything that the team dealt with last year. I feel like that kind of gets overlooked. The Dodgers kind of had a lot of storylines going against them last year. You had the whole Ippei thing that started off the season to manage the clubhouse and back Otani and get everyone to still focus on the goal that early in the season. You got the injuries, the pitching dilemma the past 2 seasons, being able to manage that, the bullpen, your staff each and every day, not really knowing who's going to start in the next 3 days because you never know what's going to happen with one of your arms. I mean, Dave Roberts has definitely put his work in, and there's really, I would say, no one else out there that I think I would say, yes, let's. I know there was a lot of Alex Cora talk, especially last year after the Dodgers got beat by the Arizona Diamondbacks, but I just don't see any other manager that fits as well with the Dodgers as Dave Roberts does, which is saying a lot because a lot of fans hated him. A lot of fans didn't like the decisions he made. And then now you fast forward to today, you look at social media, everyone's praising the guy. But at the end of the day, winning talks. And I think Dave Roberts has done a lot of winning over the last year.
Oh, no doubt about it. I've never been a hater of Dave Roberts. I've criticized him a number of times, but I've never really been on that bandwagon of not liking the guy. I think he's been a really good coach for the Dodgers organization. He's done very well. So yeah, pay him what he deserves. And retire that number when his contract's over or when he decides to leave.
Yeah, so it'll definitely be something we keep an eye on. I'm curious to see how quickly things progress over the next couple of days. Realistically, the Dodgers get ready to leave for Tokyo in less than a week. They play their last Cactus League game this upcoming week, so not much time left to get an extension done before the team leaves to head over across seas. I would say the way things have been reported right now, maybe we hear something tonight, maybe we hear something tomorrow morning. I would say it's probably going to get done before, I would even say before the middle of next week, I think everything should be wrapped up. But definitely be sure to subscribe here. We'll definitely have some reactions to that. Follow
Mhm.
the Bleed Lows podcast on our socials. DodgersBeat.com will definitely have updates and articles on this entire situation as well. But it'll be something to watch over the next couple days. But we can get into some fun things now, and that's something that we talked about before this episode, and that was Roki Sasaki making his Cactus League debut. And
Yep.
Mike, I know you're a guy that has kind of been on the Sasaki tail for the past like several years. You're one of the only guys that I've ever heard mention his name, last year or the year before that. So credit to you there. First value, we see him in a game. I know you were there in spring training about a week ago when he faced live hitters on the Chicago White Sox for the first time. Didn't go the best, on social media. Obviously, that was getting replayed. Kyle Teal's home run off of him. But you saw him kind of get into the game and get in a rhythm there. Looked really good at the end of everything. You hear Dave Roberts say, yes, he, looked good. Velocity was good, mid 90s. What are your takeaways from his debut in these 3 scoreless innings of work the other day?
My takeaway from his coming in and relieving Yamamoto, I think he did a really good job. You could see the difference and some of the adjustments that he made from his live batting practice when he did with the White Sox, when the minor leaguer put the ball over the wall, on him. He didn't seem to fade out like he did during his live BP. Like in the third inning, he seemed really strong. You could tell he was a little bit nervous in the beginning, when he got in there. But once he got into his rhythm, his pitches were in there. His fastball velocity was kind of staying the same as what it was in the NPB last year. Middle to high 90s. I was kind of surprised. I thought, with him being all jacked up and juiced up, from the adrenaline, that he would hit the 100 mile an hour mark. But he did. His off-speed stuff was super good, and people got to see what he's capable of. I think he's going to be a really good pitcher. I think he's got a little bit more to work on in regards to being comfortable, getting advice from the pitchers that pitch in the major leagues, getting himself into an everyday routine that they get into, which he needs to really get for himself. Because like I said the last time we talked, the criticism in the NPB was his durability during mid-season and after, and how he dropped off and how he would have to take time off. So I think the major leagues is completely different. When you're pitching around Clayton Kershaw, Blake Snell, even Yamamoto is going to be able to give him some advice, from what what he learned from last year. I think that's going to go a long way for him, and I think we're going to see. I think he's going to start. I still think he's going to start Game 2 in the Japan series. I'm not going to be. I'll actually be surprised if he doesn't, but I think he's going to make the start Game 2 for the Japan series, and where he'll be in the rotation. I still have him as a number 4, number 5. If he makes the team.
Yeah, I think overall, looking at his stats for anyone that it was living under a rock and didn't check it out, 3 scoreless innings against the Cincinnati Reds, collected 5 strikeouts, had 1 walk, a hit by pitch, 47% whiff rate, which is remarkable. His splitter looked devastatingly nasty. It kind of was confusing a lot of MLB analysts out there just because of the way it was spinning. He threw 1 pitch and it looked 3 different ways multiple times. It had hitters off balance. It had myself off balance. And that's kind of some of the takeaways I would take from this start here. Jacob Brownson, our co-host here on the show, he wasn't able to join us today to go over in depth with Sasaki, but he posted a great thread on X that everybody can check out on his page. But he went over that splitter, and I just thought it was really interesting that the RPM on it was 518, which is well below what the average RPM of a splitter in Major League Baseball is. A regular splitter, like one that like Tony Gonsolin or Kirby Yates throw on the staff, is around 1,000 to 1,500 RPM. When you get anything under that, you're kind of in knuckleball territory. So think of it as this way. his splitter can either move glove side, arm side. It goes straight down with the vertical movement,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about as fast as, a sinker. 89, 90 miles per hour is where he could probably max out with that split fastball, and it's spinning like a knuckleball. So you saw a lot of those Reds hitters, they were definitely off balance when he threw that pitch. I can see why it's an 80 grade pitch right now. When he was in the MPB, Mike, the splitter was obviously his signature pitch. Do you think that's
Mm-hmm.
going to translate still in Major League Baseball? Because it seems like, the MLB pipeline liked the pitch. The Reds hitters didn't like the pitch this past Tuesday. What are your eyes on with the splitter?
Oh, definitely. It definitely plays just like Yamamoto's does. That was a big question mark. With Yoshinobu. Is his going to play into the major leagues, and his plays just as well. I'm actually a little surprised about his splitter and as well as it did. I thought he was going to need to make a little bit more adjustments with his hands and his hands placement, because I actually thought that he was going to maybe struggle a little bit with his spin rate, with the ball being quite a bit different than it is in the NPB, being a little bit bigger. It's not as tacky as the NPB ball. The laces are completely different, than the NPB ball also. So I thought he was going to have to adjust a little bit more. Sorry about that. When it came to that. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be some adjustments in terms of a lot of his pitches. It's a new ball, it's a tackier
Mm-hmm.
ball. He's got to get used to the mound. The major league hitters, even though there's a mix of minor league guys, major league guys, they're still hitters, and they're going to be better than the ones that he's been facing in Japan. And we had some data from his pitches and his pitch selection and how they would translate from the World Baseball Classic, but it was such a small sample size
Oh yeah.
that you can't really go off too much with it. And now the thing I loved about this game is that we had StatCast metrics all over him because they were at, Camelback Ranch in Glendale, Arizona. How all spring training facilities don't have all these metrics available in the year 2025 astounds me, but that's a conversation for another day and how these teams run their organizations. The other thing I liked is that you don't really take into account until you see his presence on the mound is just how tall he is. He is a very tall, lanky guy. He had 6.9 feet of extension, which is giving hitters way less time to react to any one of his pitches, whether it's the fastball, the slider, the splitter, especially when it's moving around like it was. I think that's why you saw the hitters extremely off balance. And I know one concern that we had coming into, the offseason and when the Dodgers were going to go after Sasaki was, if you look at his 2024 numbers, velocity was down. His command was a little bit wild, issuing a lot of walks, free passes there. The Dodgers kind of were getting a wild card. And even Sasaki himself, if anyone's followed his offseason and his free agency, he asked those teams that were interested in him, how can I change? Like, how can I get back to my 2022 self where I was averaging 99, 100 miles per hour, and all the movement in my pitches felt fine? Is it a mechanic thing? Was it an arm thing? That's a question that still remains to be seen. I'm probably hoping that it was just a mechanical issue that the Dodgers themselves solved, and that's what we saw on this past start for Sasaki. But you looking at him, I know you were one of the guys that you had that concern. His velocity was down. He was wild in the MPB last year. The Dodgers, even though they're getting him on an international minor league deal, it's still a risk because you don't know what type of pitcher you're going to get. We've seen him at his highs. We've seen him at his lows. Speaking of his velocity first, was that surprising to you that he was, first pitch off the gate, 99 miles per hour?
No, it wasn't. Well, I shouldn't say no. I was a little surprised, on his velocity, but again, I wasn't that surprised on it, again, because he has the adrenaline that's pumping through him. First time being in the States, being on national TV, pitching against a major league team, making his first start, after Yamamoto. So yeah, he's going to be jacked up a little bit, and so I'm not really that surprised. But in the same way, I am surprised because Lotte had him, everything was so hush hush last year, in the NPB when it came down to him, especially when he was out for like, I think it was like almost 4 months, if I remember correctly, and they kept saying that he had an elbow injury, but they would not comment too much more on that, on what the elbow injury was. And then right after he came back, then everybody noticed, that his velocity was down, his spin rate was down, he had command issues. He just didn't look like the same pitcher. So everybody's like going, oh, so he has like a major arm injury, and he's going to need to possibly have it looked at, maybe surgery at the end of the year. But obviously that didn't happen. And then he knew, but there was no talk of it. So it was all speculation, on people that I follow, who follow the MPB and who report on it, pretty heavily. And some of the games that I watched, you could tell there was a big difference with him in the second half, of the season last year. I'm glad, I'm happy that, he is. When he came into spring training the first week, when pitchers and catchers reported, I was able to see with my own eyes in person, how he was pitching. He did an amazing job. His velocity seemed to be there. His control was a little off, and I account that from the off season, and him getting back into it because he was pitching within a week. I think it was like 3 days after they reported he was on the bullpen and throwing some stuff. So, and again, I think with the lab that the Dodgers have there really helped him out a lot. On the metrics that they have there. I haven't seen it. Nobody's that I know of has gone into that building where they hook him up, to everything, and they do all the analytics of him and go through, every single piece of his pitch and every motion, his hand grip, the velocity, how the spin is coming off, just everything that they go over in that building with him really looked like it's helped him out, tremendously, in regards to getting some of it back. He looks completely different, than the second half of the MPB.
Yeah, and he mentioned that in his post-game interview, after that live at-bat session that you covered at Camelback Ranch, he spent his next couple throwing sessions in that
Mhm.
laboratory, where they have all the metrics that they can measure. They have him hooked up to all tons of machinery to get every single type of metric that they can to help him improve. And I think that's where I'm hopeful that a lot of the improvements to Sasaki compared to his second half from the MPB last year to this year is maybe he was just throwing something off in his mechanics. And I think there's been multiple guys
Mhm.
that have definitely dove into his throwing patterns and how he looked throughout his past couple of years, because we didn't really have much statistical data from the MPB. A lot of this stuff didn't translate over here to the States because you also have to, like I mentioned, you have to, what is it going to be like with a Major League Baseball compared to an MPP baseball and all that stuff, all those factors there. But he looked good. The velocity
Mhm.
was surprising for even me. I was curious to see, if he starts pumping mid 90s, how fast and how quickly would the fan base, start to go erupt on arms, because we saw a little bit of that on
Right.
social media before he took the mound. But I do think it is a foregone conclusion. He's definitely going to get that game 2 start in Japan. It just
Yeah.
seems to make sense, unless his debut or his next start he just gets lit up. I think it's kind of just a safe bet to say yes, he's going to start that game. I was surprised it was a scoreless outing. I feel like sometimes these nerves can get to you. And one of the at bats that I really like that we can kind of touch on here too is he was going against one of the Reds minor league prospects, throws a fastball kind of down the plate, and the guy pimps it. It just
Mhm.
was foul. It would have been a home run if he could have straightened it out a little bit more. Sasaki shook off a lot of pitches and wanted to continue throwing that fastball to try to get it by him. Couldn't do it. And then at the end of it, he broke out the splitter to get him out on a strikeout. I think that
Yep.
showed a lot about Sasaki himself, where at the end of the day, this guy trusts his stuff, and a lot of pitching, it's a lot of mental, not always physical. And I think Sasaki showing that confidence this early only bodes well for him, the Dodgers, Dave Roberts, everybody that's going to be involved with this guy. What did you make from that at bat, or anything else you want to talk about for his start?
No, I agree with that. And again, watching them, for as long as I have, and Yamamoto at the same time, because I watched them both, and kind of followed them and wrote on them, years ago. It's exactly what you said. His confidence. He knows his pitches. He knows where he can put it. Um, he knows his abilities that he has, and that's the thing about those Japanese pitchers is they're so disciplined with everything and their routine that they do, uh, and their confidence level. It's just incredible. So that didn't surprise me at all. He's easy to adjust, and I think Will Smith even commented that after the game, on when just talking to him and how well that he can adjust his pitches, the way that he shook him off a couple times and wanted to throw something else because he knew that he'd be able to throw the strike and put him in there.
Yeah, so the next time we'll probably see Sasaki, I imagine him and Yamamoto will get one more appearance in Cactus League play. Probably a
Mhm.
similar situation where they piggyback each other. And then the Dodgers, like I mentioned earlier in the episode, they get ready to head off, end the Cactus League play, go head on to Tokyo, play a couple exhibition games against some Japanese teams, and then kick off the regular season with their 2-game series against the Chicago Cubs. So one final tune-up for both of those guys. It'll be curious to see how Sasaki looks next time out. Now teams have footage on him, stuff like that. So, but I am excited. I'm more excited than I initially
Mhm.
was coming into the start, especially seeing how dominant he looked against those Reds hitters. I'm gonna be really excited. On whatever day he's starting early in the morning here. When he's in Japan playing in front of his home country's fans. It's going to be an exciting game, exciting series, and we can't wait for that. Another Japanese star that we're going to kind of close things out for today is Shohei Ohtani. We got some updates on him in terms of where he is at with his pitching program. And depending on who you ask, it could either sound good or it could be a nothing burger. But Dave Roberts was asked after the game today about where they are and when he will throw his next bullpen because it's been, I believe, 8 days since he last threw his 4th bullpen. Dave Roberts, quote, "We just felt that to intensify the bullpens alongside of the intensity of games wasn't smart. So we just kind of wanted to slow play it." Are you liking what you're hearing from, Dave Roberts here? Are you have any scares or concerns about Otani not throwing a bullpen? He's still throwing it. If anyone hasn't seen anything, updates like that around, he's still throwing, soft toss, long toss, all that stuff. He just isn't throwing off a mound, and the Dodgers don't plan on him facing hitters before they leave for Tokyo. It seems like it's
Mhm.
going to be when they return stateside, they'll go with next steps. But off face value, what is your worry level there after these comments?
No worry at all, especially after what I saw. Um, yeah, again, referring back to the days that I was back in spring training, I'm not worried at all about what Otani can do and his ability. I was actually surprised watching his bullpens, getting the film that I got off of him on how accurate he was. I thought he was going to be a little bit more off. His command was going to be a lot different than what it is. I was actually really surprised about that. I think the bullpen that Roger and I saw was his last. I think he hit 97 or 96 miles an hour on his fastball during that bullpen that they shouted out there. So his velocity is still there. Um, he looked good. He doesn't look like he has any remnants from his surgeries. It looks like he's not hindered at all from his shoulder surgery at all. As we see, on the TV, watching the games, he blasted his first home run, that's out of there. So, what he had done to his shoulder seems to be, kind of worked out, for the most part. But now, what Dave Roberts said, I see them slow playing him. Yeah, they're going to slow play the guy. He's a two-way player. They've never had a two-way player like this, on the team before, especially with Dave Roberts. So they have talked about that. They've talked to the Angels, and seen a bunch of film, on them and what they did, how they managed his games, as a two-way player. So I think they're trying to get used to it and trying to make adjustments and how it's going to best suit the team. So that's all I think that it is. Because like I said, I still think that they're trying to figure things out, and how they're going to play him, especially when he's pitching, and his off days, and what his routine is going to be like. So, and he's given them, a lot of good insight also on what he needs and what he needs to do. I'm not worried about him at all. I think he's going to come out. I do agree that they're slow playing him, just the way that they're probably slow playing Evan Phillips, and Michael Kopech. Kopech's also, has mentioned that he feels really good. He feels back to normal. He did say that he feels like he is like a week behind. I think it was. Same with Evan Phillips. So I think they're slow play these guys. Especially with the 2-game series in Japan, and it's not like we're in a shortage of pitchers right now, so they can slow pay them and get them healthy. Instead of bringing them back too early to where they're going to injure themselves again later on in the year.
Yeah, I think if you look in between the lines, I don't think there's too much to be worried about. Obviously, you do have the slight chance of say maybe he felt some discomfort. The team wanted to, give him
Mhm.
some time in between it. But I feel like if he saw any type of setback, he wouldn't be throwing a baseball at all. They would shut him down from throwing completely. We wouldn't
And
see him on
hitting.
the back. We wouldn't see him on the backfields throwing next to Clayton Kershaw. So I think that's a good sign there. I think the Dodgers are smart because you can't lose Otani, the hitter. He's too crucial to this overall lineup. We saw what he did last year, 9+ WAR as a DH, 50-50 season. I think Otani, the hitter and the designated hitter, is more valuable than Otani, the pitcher. And he's going to return back to two-way player status. The Dodgers, I think Dave Roberts put it best. They're going to slow play him, just like they've slow played everybody this spring training besides
Mhm.
Mookie Betts, who wants to get the reps out there at shortstop to get the at-bats and ready for the season. But they know the mission at ahead. And it's something that I've kind of, been putting out there is that I want these guys healthy come October. I don't want to go into a situation that we went to this past October. I know we won the World Series with it that way, but it was a stressful ride to get there. Only
Mhm.
having, 2, 3 viable starters, going with bullpen games, and the Dodgers and them players themselves have even mentioned it. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't public about the grind and the toll on their bodies that playing that many games this season, playing as hard in the intensity driven environment of October. They had a short off season. They have an even shorter spring training, and they kick off the season even earlier than 28 other teams. So they're feeling it. The Dodgers are reading the room right now. They know health has to be above everything. And Otani, as much as I want to see him pitch right away, I'm fine if they wait until May, June, July. Hell, if
Yeah.
they want to wait all the way into August until he's ready, that's fine by me because you bring up a great point. Right now on paper, they have a plethora of pitching. Obviously, health is the biggest factor there is how can Tony Gonsolin fare? Dustin May, is he going to pitch more than, like 50 innings this season? Glass now is another wild card where it's like, all right, if he's healthy, he's a top 10 starter in baseball. We saw what he looked like in the first half last year. But Otani himself, when he is on the mound, he is a top 10 pitcher. He was in the Cy Young conversation, the last time when he was out there with the Angels. He won the MVP his final year there. He probably would have been a top 3 Cy Young finisher that year as well. I think the biggest takeaway from all this is what David Vassay tweeted out is that the guy who's really running the strings, Andrew Freeman, never gave a set deadline or when Otani was going to, one, face hitters and make his, 2025 regular season debut on the mound. He
Yeah.
pretty much said at Dodger Fist that Otani wasn't going to face hitters when they were in spring training. And technically, I know they have those 2 regular season games, but I imagine they're going to intensify everything once they return home. Maybe we see him throw a bullpen during that exhibition series against the Angels. But other than that, I'm still saying late May is the earliest we'll see Otani. I think that's a good thing to have, looking forward to. Late May, maybe even early June is when he should make his debut on the mound because 2 Tommy John surgeries, a shoulder surgery, hitting
Right.
at the same time. Not many players can come back from even one of those. So I think the Dodgers are being smart here, taking their time. There's no pressing need right now to rush Otani out of this. And we've seen what happens to players that get rushed. Cody Bellinger's a guy that comes to mind. He came back really early from his shoulder surgery. He had the leg fracture in 21, never really looked the same the rest of his Dodgers tenure. I don't think you want to rush that with Ohtani when he's still got 9 years left of his contract.
I think Dustin May came back a little early too, during his time with John. Look what happened to him. He had to get some he didn't go through a full Tommy John. They just had to do some cleanup work on it. But I thought they brought him back a little bit early also. And Bueller, probably came back a little too early also when he did. So, I completely agree. I'm not going to be surprised if he doesn't come in until, May, June. And we don't really need him. I think the guy that I have my eyes on, and if I had to name a pitcher that I would be worried about, for this season, it would be Tyler Glasnow. That's the guy that I'm kind of, looking at to see how he's going to fare, after his past season. How's he going to look when he comes back? Is he going to be able to do a full season, with the team? And look at Ben Casparius. Look what he's been doing in spring training. Look what Jackson Ferris did, today, in his pretty much his debut. That's there. I mean, it's not like, the organization does not have the amount of arms that they need to be able to fill that spot. I truly believe that Tony Gonsolin is going to be really good this year. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people and what he's in his capabilities this year. So, we got him, we got May that's back, we got Casparius, we got Knack. Why bring back Otani and why rush him? We got plenty of pitchers.
Yeah, and that can change in a minute. When's the last time we've seen Blake Snell? I mean, that's the other conversation going around right now. There were reports that he threw in the backfields, but I haven't seen anything really definitive come out of that. Is he going through something? Glasnow is the biggest wild card of this rotation, and how's his elbow going to fare? The Dodgers have the depth to sustain a 162 game season. But we saw, even with that depth last year, if these guys aren't healthy in October, that's the reason why all the media picked the Padres to win that National League Division Series. That's the reason why a lot of people said, the Mets have a chance to win this. And then when they got into the World Series against the Yankees, what was the biggest X factor that everyone was picking the Yankees to win the World Series for? Their starting rotation. And the Dodgers know you can't go into October with no pitching, especially starting pitching. And I know they want Ohtani to be there at the biggest stage, at the two-way player status. DHing and starting a postseason game is the ultimate dream for Ohtani himself, the Dodgers, Major League Baseball. Everybody wants that to happen. And the only way they can get it to happen is if he has a healthy 2025 season. And I think he knows the bigger picture. The Dodgers know the bigger picture. They'll do the right thing. Like I said, mid-May, late May, early June is when we'll probably see him take the mound. And if anything really was happening with his arm, he wouldn't be throwing or hitting right now either, like you said.
Yeah. They'd have him shut down, and he'd be tucked away in a corner over there with no access. You wouldn't even see him. So.
And, the last thing to kind of close everything out here, we can go over it kind of quickly. Spring breakout. The rosters were announced for the Los Angeles Dodgers and all 29 other teams. I like the spring breakout thing. It really highlights a lot of these minor league players that wouldn't, get that action, especially in, minor league camp or major league camp when some of these guys don't get into the, 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. A lot of people, not like us, are turning off those games around once the major league starters are removed. Quick question here for you. What's a guy that you're looking at on this roster, that could make a move, or someone that you're looking for specifically in this game?
So my pick has been my pick, before the season ever started. I'm really high on Jackson Ferris. I think he's going to do really good in the spring breakout. My big thing is him. Some other names that I'm going to be looking for is Amam Morales. I'm looking forward to seeing him, and Vargas also. The two guys that came in, through from Puerto Rico. They did very well in the AFL last year. So I'm looking to see them. I'm hoping to be there to cover the game and produce some content for the channel. So those are the three guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Jose DePaula, Zaire Hope, they're gonna do very well. I'm not gonna be surprised if Zaire, hits like 1 or 2 home runs during that game. So I think the real surprise for me was Kendall George, that he actually made the team. So that's one one surprise for me. But Jackson Ferris and the 2 shortstops from Puerto Rico, I'm eager to see if they're going to play them at the same time. See if they put Morales at in short and Vargas at third base, or opposite, to see what they look like there. But yeah, that's my takeaway from it.
Yeah, I agree with all the names that you mentioned, especially Ferris. After seeing his outing, today, he looked really good out there. I mean, can't go wrong with Jose DePaula or Zaire Hope. All these guys. Mike Sirota, our guy, we had him on the show a couple weeks back. Seems poised to take the next step in his career. I don't think he appeared at any minor league games last year. He played a few inner squad games at Reds camp after he got drafted last year. Got to remember, guys, he was in a top 5 round pick last season. So he hasn't really gotten much action under his belt, but he had a really good collegiate career, especially playing in Northeastern where it's really cold. College baseball season starts in like February. It's kind of crazy over here. It ain't warm over here, Mike, on the East Coast.
Oh, I know. And very competitive too.
So, but one guy I'm going to go with my Delaware guy, Jake Eloff. Third base is kind of a question mark after Max Muncy's gone. I mean, you do have the possibility of hey, if they keep Dalton Rushing, move him to catcher, maybe Will Smith can be a third base. That's a question for another day. We'll see what the Dodgers do there. But other than that, it's this 1 year with Muncy, and then it's kind of just like free agent trade, or one of these prospects is going to have to step up. And Geloff could potentially be that guy. His brother has had, his cup of tea at the major league level, had a really good season 2 or 3 years ago, has been in a downward spiral since. But just being around him here in the state of Delaware, I know what hit tool he has, one of the more popular players in the small state over here on the East Coast. That's a guy I'll watch. Vargas at shortstop, that's another one that I think could be interesting as well. But yeah, I think a lot of these guys, especially DePaula, Hope, they're gonna shine because they looked really good in their spring action with the big league camp this year. I mean,
they actually did better than I thought. They did a lot better than what I thought. I'm not surprised about Zaire Hope. I'm a little bit more surprised about Jose on his performance and what he did and his adjustments that he made. I think he had a really, really good spring training. And one thing about third base, do not count out Cody Hosey.
Cody Hosey is a guy that I've heard for years. We're waiting for him to take that next step. Career minor leaguer right now. We'll see what he does. He had a couple good hits this spring, so we'll see, what he does in the future. But I think that was a good way to end tonight's episode. A lot to be excited about. Dave Roberts' extension probably imminent. We'll probably hear reports about that either tonight, tomorrow, or hopefully on, over the weekend by Sunday. And then the Ohtani thing, that's something that we'll probably get more information as the days go on, especially probably when the team gets to Tokyo and more Japanese outlets ask him about where he is at in his recovery. Also, if you have not yet subscribed, like the show, like the channel, click the notification bell to stay alert on all the content we're posting. We got pregame, postgame. We got, Mike's getting ready to go back out to Camelback Ranch to hopefully cover the spring breakout game. And then the regular season's about to be here, guys. We will be covering the team, so we'll have all those videos here on the channel. And then DodgersBeat.com is where we're doing all of our editorial work. Got pretty much articles coming out every day, multiple articles per day. We got something on Dave Roberts. We got the spring breakout rosters posted there as well. So be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out my work, Mike's work, and everybody else that contributes to the page. But other than that, any closing comments, Mike, before we end it tonight?
The other thing to possibly mention is we'll more likely be at the Freeway Series, what they deem still spring training against the Angels. 2 games at Anaheim and 1 game in at Dodger Stadium, and we'll be covering that also. So
Yeah.
make sure to like and subscribe and follow for good quality content that's about to be coming our way.
Yeah. Got a lot of stuff coming out of the pipeline here at the Bleed Los. We also got multiple, shows. We got this one here where the live stream, breaking news, latest news, all that stuff. We also got the all Spanish version, all Japanese version, and the Carne Asada is back in full swing as well. So be sure to subscribe to check out all that Dodgers content, and we will see you on the next one. This episode was brought to you by BetOnline. Have a good night, guys.